it's not going to be easy. And you can see there's the light blue, which is known oil that is yet to be developed, but then there's that medium blue, which is oil we think is there, but we haven't discovered yet. So, we have good reason to believe that there's still about half of all the oil that we've used that is basically equal. The amount of oil that we've used through history is equal to what we still have, but we're using, of course, at a much higher rate. And of course, it's the second half that's going to be much, much harder to deploy and use, and it's going to be much more expensive. And we had a fantastic talk this morning. The keynote speaker, Jeremy Rifkin, referred to that problem, and it's a fundamental issue. We think we can do this, but we think it's just going to keep getting more and more expensive. And, this only takes us to 2035. Things only get harder after that. And in fact, if you look on those three blue fields, it's effectively flat conventional oil. Everything else is something else that we're beginning to use. And eventually, if we don't prevent it from happening, we're going to be using things like coal to liquids as our liquid fuels, which are really a disastrous kind of fuel from a climate point of view. And speaking of climate, this is the other thing that I wanted to show that is really a foundation for why the International Energy Agency is very concerned about all these issues. And this is a carbon wedge diagram that shows where, on the top edge, where we're headed if we don't change worldwide over in the near future, that by 2050 we would double our global CO2. That is the 6-degree change in atmospheric temperature scenario, and it's really a very disastrous climate scenario. Again, as Jeremy Rifkin mentioned this morning, each degree of warming has a range of likely consequences that are fairly dire, and 6 degrees would be very bad news. So the bottom edge is still 2. It's the 2-degree pathway, but you can see from that in order to follow that 2-degree pathway, we have to have a global peaking of CO2 between 2015 and 2020. We're running out of time to change direction on CO2. And in fact, one of the key messages of this new World Energy Outlook is the door is closing on this lower edge of this wedge diagram, the 450 parts per million in the atmosphere, 2-degree scenario will get very difficult to do if we don't bend that curve very soon. So time is of the essence. We have to move fairly quickly and be creative. We're going to need rates of change in the way we live and in the technologies we use that are very new for humans. I think that we've never really had to face before, changes in lifestyle. And here's just an example. This is part of that last scenario. I'll just go back and point out that one of the things that we find is we need major changes across all the energy-using sectors, buildings, electricity generation, transportation. There's no escape for anybody. Everything has to be transformed. And in transport, we do think that electric vehicles will play an important role, or could play a very important role. If you didn't have a strong transition to electric vehicles, and in particular light-duty vehicles, cars, passenger cars and light trucks, if we don't get that kind of a transition, it's just going to make things a lot harder. I mean, it's possible that we can go to natural gas vehicles, which helps, but it doesn't give you that zero emission possibility. We might be able to go to hydrogen vehicles, but there are more issues related to hydrogen than there are related to electricity. It's a bigger transition. It's, at this point, a more expensive transition. We also, at the IEA, are looking at that, and we think probably there is a role for hydrogen, but it will take longer. So that's the picture we've got of the next 20 years, 25 years, on what we would like to see happen with electric vehicles. We've got plug-in hybrids there and pure electric vehicles that are that have no liquid fuel, but the ratios aren't that important. The key point here is that we'd be up to 70 million vehicles per year of sales in 2035, and to get there it's just going to be a really challenging transition. Even by 2020, this reflects about 7 million vehicles per year. And the Electric Vehicles Initiative, which is all these countries working together, in fact has collectively a target that's very close to that number of 7 million vehicle sales, electric vehicle sales per year by 2020. So now it's a question of figuring out how to do it.